Audio sync. 3, 2, 1.
That was
It was pitiful, but I think it'll pick up.
apropos for the day.
Yeah, very.
Whoa. Lance.
Welcome back, everyone, to Nopes and Opes. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Hylan.
Yeah.
Today has been an easygoing, easy breezy day with no faults or anything, and we're just positive and happy to be here.
That is absolutely not true. We have tried our best and come up short again and again and again. And we are going to come at this episode with a new approach, I think we did, it is now 5:30 in the afternoon.
Yep.
And we have done our best and come up with pretty minimal results.
Yeah.
And
we haven't been performing like we usually do.
No, absolutely not. The flow has not been there, and it's been a struggle for sure. Which is strange because I feel as if I came into this one feeling the most
excited,
like the most flow, like the most like I have so much to offer, and it has just been. It hasn't necessarily been the fact that we don't have things to talk about. One time the battery ran out. One time Hylan did not turn on his microphone again for a second time. Another time we
just lost the magic.
We just lost the magic. I mean, it's been the struggle's real.
Yeah.
And I think that's really kind of important to point out. Like if you do listen to this and if you do appreciate some of the things that we say and you enjoy the dialogue and the relationship and the magic that does happen between us, please just realize that it does take a lot, and there is a lot of failure, and there is a lot of redos and a lot of retakes and a lot of just giving up and saying, okay, that one's a wash.
Yeah. Imagining having a conversation with someone and being like, all right, we messed it up. Let's try and have the exact same conversation because of how good it was.
Yeah.
Like reshooting one of the episodes, it's tough to do. And I really don't like doing it because I like it the first time we do it because it's like the most authentic reaction to it.
Yeah.
But there's some times where it's like, that was such a good premise or such a good moment that I want to try and recreate it. And it's very hard to recreate.
And there were like 3 of them this weekend that I was just like,
well, the first 2 we did,
awesome.
The very first 2 we recorded, it's Hylan's first reaction to like seeing the setup and everything. And one camera is recording in 23 frames per second and the other one was in 60. So if I put them on the same sequence and try to put it on YouTube, the main camera, which has both of us on it, would be in slow motion. And the other one, that's the Rowan cam, would be in normal speed. But that would not work.
It'd be kind of cool.
The audio would be so not in sync.
Okay.
So, but now we feel confident that we've gotten the kinks out.
Well,
I said that last episode, and I'm hoping it's true this one.
I do think 2 things. No, a couple things. 3 things maybe. Perseverance is really important.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just got to suck it up and keep going. Oh, and then another thing too. One of the good things about working with me is when we do record something for the second time, oftentimes I forget what the heck I said the first time or what Rowan said. And so my reactions like the second time are kind of like, oh,
yeah. They're pretty similar.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I honestly didn't remember that.
Sometimes I'm like, is Hylan acting? Like, is he trying his best to act or is it actually genuine?
Yeah.
So
sometimes it is acting and sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we did talk about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the benefits of working with the older dude.
Well, and also the thing is that now we record all of the episodes in a weekend and we do them in like bunches. And we try to get as many as we possibly can in one weekend. So that way it gives us time for me to edit them so that we're not constantly have to travel to Minnesota, to Peoria and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we do feel like a little bit of pressure. Like, ooh, we got to get a good amount. So that way we can, hold out because we want to release them every single week. Like we don't like having breaks or not having episodes to post. And we really don't want to do it between me and Hylan via Zoom or anything or like a phone call. It's
Oh,
definitely
I
not the same.
refuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't
So
do that.
that's why we're kind of like, okay, we want to make these things work and do our best. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing I also really love about it because this is one of the first things in a while that I'm like, ooh, we really like care about making it as best we can, especially 50 episodes in. Like we want it to be a polished
Well,
product.
I think that's important to point out too. I think in the beginning we might have been okay with some of
Oh
the
yeah.
episodes that we recorded, and now our kind of expectations and our kind of like line that we draw, like,
Hmm.
oh, this is acceptable or this
Like
is
the
not
standard is
acceptable.
higher.
The standard is much higher, and I hope that translates into the product that you're seeing or listening to now because there there is a lot of care. There's a lot of pride in the things that we do, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And so, yeah, I just hope that people recognize that and appreciate that, and that it people continue to listen and kind of grow as we grow, and just kind of allow for some of the growing pains, but
Mhm.
also appreciate some of the growth that we are showing and kind of like hopefully transmitting.
Well, speaking of growth and growing pains, this episode is going to be about kind of relationships and the realization that maybe it's not going to work, which
Oh,
is a very painful realization. I think me and Hyland both have some knowledge of that.
oh man. I just like my whole kind of stomach just dropped a little bit.
So,
Oh,
I recently was talking with someone, and they have a mentality when it comes to relationships that no matter what, you can work through it, whatever the hardship may be.
oh,
And I kind
okay,
of was trying to talk to them about it.
okay,
And again,
okay.
like, I'm very big on not telling you how to live your life or telling you what's wrong or right. You know yourself the best, you'll figure it out. Um, but like the mentality I had at the end of my last relationship was like, it's okay if it doesn't work out. Like we
Mm.
tried our best, it's okay. And it was a very kind of positive thing for me to like accept that.
And I think that was an important, like we discussed that on the podcast. And I
Mhm.
remember when you said those words, I was very impressed, but I that you got to that conclusion because I don't even know if I've gotten to that conclusion in my own life yet about one of my relationships. And then I was really proud. I was like, yeah, that a boy, Rowan. And I was proud of you and as a team, right? Because I think you both had
Yeah.
to kind of work together to get to that point. And I think that showed a lot of maturity. And yeah, I was like, ooh, like I think Rowan's further on down the road than I am. So
Yeah.
like it kind of kickstarted. I was like, okay, Hylan, like you can do this too, buddy.
Yeah. And so when I was having this conversation, I was kind of trying to reflect on that and how I reached that conclusion because I truly do think that people can grow apart, people change, and there are certain things that have to do with compatibility that I think are very important in like a relationship really working. And so the kind of question that I have is that or kind of how I phrase it is like, can we truly work through love? My friend believes that no matter what, you can work through a relationship. I personally, I don't believe so. I believe you can reach a point where you can't work through it in terms of compatibility, right? Like I think relationships are not easy, but they shouldn't be hard. And so, what I mean by that is there will be times where you'll encounter things that are obstacles in a relationship, right? And I'm talking like after the honeymoon phase, after you kind of, once you start to really get to know someone and they start to be kind of integrated into your life, then you start to come up with things of like, okay, are we on the same page about this or that? And those are where those kind of obstacles come into play and
Mhm.
whether or not you can work through them. I don't think they're necessarily easy, but if you're in a position where it's like super difficult and hard, I don't think then I think the issue is not that you can't work through it, it's a compatibility issue, right? Because I think, and granted, currently not in a relationship, only speaking on the past. So, been out of the mix for a while. But that's just kind of my point of view from the younger generation.
Well, okay. So from the older generation, I will say this, in just listening to that, my initial response is if you believe, like as your friend believes that you can work through whatever comes like within a relationship, like all relationships are going to bring difficulties and obstacles.
Yeah.
Then, like if you have that mentality, if you make that statement, then you also, like, tell me if I'm wrong, but you also then believe that compatibility is not important, it's not needed.
Yeah, I mean that's the tricky part with this friend of mine is that I was trying to not necessarily educate them, but try to get to that point of like I think the issue you're running into, my friend, is not that you can't work through it because so their mindset is like we can work through it. Like we can get over this. But is that the same for your partner? Or do they have the same mindset? And if they don't have the same mindset, then it's a compatibility issue, if that makes sense.
I don't know if I'm super following because I was thinking my own thoughts there. Like, say it just one more time.
Okay.
Just in
So,
you can say the same words or you can say it differently.
okay, we'll see what happens. So my friend has the mentality, no matter what, we can work through this. Like this issue we're having is something that we can solve
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
What about the feelings of the other partner in the relationship? If they don't have the same mentality, I think it is a compatibility issue that they are not willing to work through it as much as you are. So I think you reach that point of like, no matter what, like we can work through this, it will be okay. But if the person that you're also dating does not feel the same way, it's not going to work out. Like that's a compatibility issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But um, my thinking is, if you're that far off in your thinking,
Hmm.
there's already a non compatibility issue,
Right.
right? So, are we saying the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Yes, I agree.
Mm.
I agree 100%. I think yeah, like this is such a novel idea to me, and I'm I'm like a thousand thoughts are going through my head at the same moment, so I'm having a hard time tracking and kind of putting everything,
Hmm.
getting everything dialed in. So I my conversation and my ability to kind of keep the flow and on track might be a little bit off. So I'm going to do my best, but
Okay.
just realize this is a huge topic for me for sure, and something that I've struggled with a lot in my own life. But one thing that I feel very strongly about now at this point in my life and feeling pretty solid in all of my relationships and feeling really good about where my life's going is compatibility's ultimately so important in a relationship because when disagreements, when obstacles arise, your desire to reach some sort of compromise where both parties win
Hmm.
is based upon your compatibility,
Yeah.
your desire to be with that person no matter what, right? You're willing to maybe give up something that might be a little bit important to you in order so the other person gets something that's important to them, but you also get to retain some
Yeah.
aspect of yourself. And so, yeah, for me, I'm having a really hard time with this because I think,
Well, I also, to that point, I think that's also an incredibly dangerous mindset to have. I think what I like my point of view versus the friend that I have is that in any relationship, you should have the mentality like it's okay if this doesn't work out. Because I think a lot of people get into a situation where they start dating someone and it's been, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years,
mm,
and they start to think like this has to work.
Mm.
Like I can't recover the time that I've spent with this person and the things that I've sacrificed. Like we got to make sure this works. And I
Oh,
think that that's an incredibly dangerous mentality to have because it really limits yourself. And then I feel like it makes it so you don't have a choice. Like no matter what, I have to make sure that this other person is excited to be in a relationship with me, that we aren't having any conflicts, and you can really lose yourself in that,
oh,
right?
yeah.
And so I think that it comes like you have to have kind of a boundary for yourself to eventually like that's where the whole compatibility comes into play because there's certain things that will arise that I'm like, yes, you can work through them. Like you can choose to do whatever you can. You can sacrifice as much of yourself as you possibly want to, but I think that it's really dangerous because you're like that's what I did, right? So I got into a situation where I basically like started to shift who I was as a
Mm.
person
Yeah.
to try and get this person to feel joy and happy and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not that they asked it of me, it's just that there wasn't the way things were going. Like I just felt like I needed to change things. And it was really bad. And I got to a point where I went, I need this to work because I am like basically dying inside. Like things suck. I need you in my life. This has to work. And when I changed it to being like, hey, it's okay if it doesn't work out, it was so much healthier and I was
Mm.
able to like move on and grow from it.
Yeah.
And so like now I'm in a much better headspace than I was back then.
Yeah. I think, no, absolutely. I don't, I don't have any rebuttal for that. I think what you just said is absolutely true. And I think where the like when I made my statement, I think in saying sacrifice is the incorrect word because that has a really negative connotation. And I think you're correct in I think one of the mistakes that I have made in the past is because I liked this person so much, I was willing to sacrifice some of the things that were important to me or change some of the things that were important to me. And then the more I changed, the more resentment I had because I wasn't being true to myself. And like it's just it's a very dangerous path because you begin with the best intentions. You
Right.
begin thinking, oh, like I need this person.
Yeah.
Like we belong together. This, that, what whatever's going through your mind, and you begin to make these changes or these sacrifices or these kind of concessions, saying, oh, it's not that big a deal to me. Like my benefit being with her or him or whatever is more important than this aspect of myself. And all of a sudden, you get to a point where you're like, who the heck am I?
Right.
And what do I really have to offer anymore? Right?
Yeah.
I'm not even myself anymore. And so like if I'm not anything, then I don't really have anything to offer either. And yeah, I think that's a oh my God. Yeah. This is you're taking me down like a memory lane here and like bringing up some issues that like I've spent a lot of years. I mean, one of the reasons that I've been single as long as I have is because of a relationship that didn't work out. And it didn't work out for a lot of different reasons. But one of the things that didn't work out for me is I sacrificed too much of myself and became someone that I didn't want to be. And that caused resentment and
Yeah.
the inability to kind of act authentically.
One of the reasons why I like this topic so much is because I've been around a lot of people recently that are in relationships that not necessarily they should get out of, but I'm starting to speak with them and I could tell that there is internal conflict. And like, for instance, yeah, like it's very difficult because when you're in a relationship, like the right thing to do, like what I thought in my mind was like, if I'm in a committed, healthy relationship, I should not have feelings of like, what if I should go for something else? Like maybe this isn't right for me, right? you always think of it as like that's a really negative thought. Like you should have positive thoughts. Like you should want to work things out. You should want to continue to be with this person. You should never think, oh, what if I could actually be happier with someone else? Like, what if it's actually better for me to be with someone else? That's at least how I felt.
Mm.
And I feel like I've been around a lot of people that kind of have that same mentality. And I think it stems from that, like, it has to work. I have to be a good boyfriend. I have to be a good girlfriend. Like, I have to think about this in a positive way. But then when I talk to them and I ask them, like, about their relationships and I'm like, how's it going? Like, what do you think of them? What do you think of her? They start to tell me these things that, like, are kind of like red flags and like big issues. And you go, like, oh, okay. But then they're like, yeah, like, it's just relationships are hard, and I'm like, "Well, the situation you're in is hard, but relationships don't have to be hard. Like, they can be very just kind of like, the easy is not the right word, but just kinda, like, smooth. Like, there should be an openness to work through things together." Like, that was the great thing that, I think you can find in relationships, but I think it's very difficult, and it takes, like, a long time and dating a lot of people to find someone that you're compatible with. That's my biggest thing with compatibility is, like, how I deem things compatible. It's not like you have the same interests because I think you should have different interests. I think you should be, I think opposites attract in certain ways, but, like, compatibility for me is, like, you are willing to work through things with kind of like an openness and a curiosity to try and like hear me out, and then I will do the same for you, and that means like we can be compatible. But anytime you meet someone and you're like, "Hey, I really want to try and work through this," or like, "This thing's bothering me," and they come at you with kind of like their walls up and they kind of push back, that's when I go like, "Oh, you guys aren't compatible." Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think for such a young person, you speak very, very wisely about this topic in particular. But it like as we kind of went through the break, I was thinking like, okay,
What
when
what break are you talking about?
yeah, exactly. What so when you say you're willing to work through, or you're willing to compromise with, or you are willing to sacrifice a little bit of yourself for,
Yeah.
what's the difference?
Between all of those
Yeah.
things, I think they all kind of stem from the same thing. Like, I think it is like, I think in relationships, you are gonna have to make sacrifices. I think in relationships, you're gonna have to make compromises for them to truly work. Because if you have the mentality of like, I will not change for anyone, I will not compromise for anyone, you're gonna end up alone.
Yeah,
You know what I
absolutely,
mean?
absolutely.
Or you're gonna keep ending up in relationships where you kind of just like abuse people.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, not a really. That's not a relationship.
Yeah,
That's
no,
a
it's just kind of, it's a bad situation. That's what
yeah.
it is.
That's God knows what that is.
And so like the question you asked, like all of those things are they're not necessarily like they're the same to me. Like they're just different words of saying the same thing.
Yeah. So I think like when um so yeah, I think it does come down to semantics, right? Like
Yeah.
just like we're saying the same thing in different ways. But I think so when like in the beginning when I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you need a sacrifice," or like there needs to be some sort of sacrifice in order to come to some compromise where
Yeah.
both people can kind of come away with something.
Yeah.
I think that's where it becomes really, really sticky because that's a very, very fine point where you are willing to work with as opposed to losing part of yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I think that's,
I feel like you only lose part of yourself if the other person isn't willing to work with you through it. Let's say we're in a relationship, Hylan,
okay.
and you come to
Just pretend.
yeah, just pretend. You come to the table.
Hold on. Like, I think we've taken this way, way, way too far. The audience members are going to be like, okay,
I like to keep them in
what the
suspense.
heck is the reality? Okay, fine.
Yeah. Why do we have all these purple lights? Kind of weird.
Okay.
um, so if we're in a relationship
Yeah.
and you come to me and you're like, Rowan, I need these things. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. And I go like, okay, I'm going to give them to you no matter what so that I can make this work. I'm essentially sacrificing part of myself and I might lose certain things. But if what you're asking of me is something that as like a core value, I'm like, "Oh, I'm not okay with that." I the idea of working through it would be like you ask for this thing, but then I'd come to you and be like, "Hey, I don't think you can actually ask that of me. Here's why." And I explain like my like whatever it's the ethics or behind it or like whatever it is, like I cannot do that for you. And then if we can have a conversation about this thing that you need or either I need, and we can try and figure out a solution to it rather than just being like, I need this, give it to me. Um, that way you can like work through it and it's not like an ultimate sacrifice. It does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
I don't think that there's yeah, I do. I
It's hard to do it when we don't have examples, because it's just kinda like,
no, I
I
mean
hope I'm not getting lost in the semantics for the viewers and listeners.
no, but I just think I just like for me, like getting back to the idea of compatibility, I think compatibility, like what I was trying to say in the beginning, is compatibility gives you the willingness, the desire to work with the other person so that both people gain,
Yeah.
right? So that there's not a detraction, so that both people get what they want in a way that's beneficial. And I don't, yeah, I think, like, yeah, again, I mean, this is a lot. Like, this is tapping into things that maybe I have suppressed a little bit and maybe haven't worked through fully myself, but actually really, really good. Like I appreciate this conversation because it's allowing me to kind of work through things in real time. But for me, yeah, I just think relationships should be additional as
Mhm.
opposed to I mean one of the things that I mention in the book in relationships that I think is really, really true. I don't think necessarily everything in that chapter is exactly perfect, but one of the things that I do is I think that you should seek out someone in a relationship to share your life with, to not necessarily make it better or to fill a void or to create
Yeah.
something that you don't have, but necessarily, or, you know, like to calm your temper or to add more money or to add more status, whatever the situation may be. If there's an imbalance in the equation, then I don't think it's going to work. But if you can come together as two equal partners and just create something that's more than you are as an individual, I think that's going to be a healthy individual or a healthy relationship in the long run. But yeah, honestly, I have spent so many years thinking that I wouldn't be in a relationship and that I wouldn't have to figure all these things out or think about these things. You kind of caught me off guard, and I don't necessarily have a lot of good things to say. I don't necessarily have, like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, you, I think, may be more knowledgeable, maybe more in the mix, maybe more like in the mindset of this
Yeah.
and kind of thinking things through than I am.
And one of the reasons is because, like, the ending of my last relationship, like, it fucked me up. Like, it
Yeah.
was super hard on me, and I'm sure it was hard on the other person as well, but, just, like, from where it left me and everything I had to build back up were, like, extremely important lessons because I've always been someone that was, like, very confident in relationships, and at the end of it, I was like, "Do I know anything about relationships? Like, what the fuck happened?" And
Mm,
so now, having done all the reflecting I did in 2024, which is all about building confidence and whatnot, but a real part of that was just healing from what happened.
mm,
I'm now in a stage where like I have healed and I am excited to date again, but I also want to help. Not necessarily, I don't like saying the word like educate, but just like help people feel understood and heard if they're in a similar situation that I found myself in. And I
which I think there's so many of us.
and I keep running into situations where I'm around people that I believe are in like almost the exact same situation I had, just like a little bit of different circumstances. So for instance, like I work with all women at my bar, not my bar, at the bar that I work at. And they're all in relationships. And that's not to say that like all of these girls have like bad relationships, but like there are some girls that they'll say things about their relationships that I kind of like, they kind of like register. I kind of like, oh, that reminds me of something I went through. And I want to be like, hey, like, here's kind of like what happened to me and like something maybe to consider. But I'm also like, I'm not here to step on anyone's toes. I'm not here to be like, you should dump his ass. He's the worst, you know? Like, you
Do
don't want
you?
to go ahead.
Sorry, there's two things, two questions really. Well, how I find this amazingly interesting, and I do not know the answer, and I don't have enough experience to kind of talk intelligently about it. But how, like when we're in the middle of a relationship, how are we so blind? How is it easy
Yeah.
to look from the outside and see like this is not good, you guys. Like this is not working. But when you're in it, you're like, this is the best, and just you're just oblivious, right? So how does that happen? How does that dynamic? If you have any insight into that, and then two, do you think that you can actually explain a love lesson in words so that somebody can understand, or do they just have to go through it?
Mm, mm. I think so. To answer the second question, I think the only lesson that you can share with someone and that they'll learn from it is via your own experience. I think you have to experience it on your own, like how to love, how to be in relationships and whatnot. But I think by sharing experiences that I've been through or the experiences that what I have been through will teach you a lot, right? And it'll just shed some light on certain things. Like for instance, we had talked about in a previous episode on relationships of a comedy special by Daniel Sloss called
Mm.
Jigsaw. And he talks about an experience he went through and he does an entire comedy bit about it, and it led to multiple divorces, multiple breakups, multiple calling off of engagements and whatnot. I think I might honestly be one of those numbers. And it's not that he like taught them how to do something, it's that they were like, holy crap, I've been blinded, to answer the first question, like blind to what's going on. And I have not, you, what happens is when you get into the relationship, you don't want to admit that there is a problem, that it might not work out. Because it, like, by a default, I think people, and like for the most part, I'm the type of person by default, if I'm doing something like, I want this to work, I'm not into a, like, I'm not going to commit myself to a relationship just to be at one moment be like, ah, whatever, I'm done. You know?
Yeah.
Like you want it to work out. So when you're deep into the relationship, you can become extremely blind. And I think something like the Daniel Sloss special, it just kind of like helped people remove the blindfold a little bit. And then they were able to like examine the relationship itself. Like when I said to my past partner, it's okay if it doesn't work out, it gave us permission to really be like, okay, let's look at this thing.
Kind of look at things
What's
truthfully.
going on?
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest. Let's remove the blindfold. Let's get into it. And it
Like
ended up
where are
being
we really at?
and it ended up being like, okay, it's not working out. We
Mm.
should move on. And I think that's something that I just wish more people could see. And I think when I'm talking to these girls or friends that I have that are in these situations, I'm just like, I just want to be like, hey, like it doesn't have to work out. And I think the thing is like, so like I had a conversation with someone that was kind of in a somewhat situation of that, and they're aware that the relationship they're in is kind of like on shifty waters, if you will, right? Because they even themselves had said like, I don't know if it's going to work out because of this specific thing, right? Whatever it may be.
Right.
And so when I was talking to them, I was kind of like, you know, like you're aware, like you're telling me, like you're trying to tell me one thing, but then the next second you're saying another thing.
Well, they're trying to tell you one thing and they're trying to tell themselves one thing, right?
Exactly.
They know deep within
Yeah.
what the reality is, but a lot of times we're trying to convince, like when we're trying to convince you, we're
Yeah.
also trying to convince ourselves as
Yeah.
well.
And if you end up convincing the person you're telling, then they're like, okay, no, I am right. And it's like, no, you know. And so it takes someone being like holding people accountable and being honest. Because it's very easy to be in a situation where someone's complaining about a significant other and to be like, you guys will work through it. You know, like you'll get over this. Like when I was in the like worst part of my past relationship, I came home and I was talking to my brothers about it. And like Noah, my other brother was like, older brother was like, I mean, I think you guys will get over this. Like, I think, you know, you'll figure it out. Like, it'll be okay. And I was like, hey, man, like, I don't really think so, man. Like, I think this is it. And I had already like kind of come to the conclusion that like it is not working out. And this is so what happened was is we had the conversation like it's okay if it doesn't work out. And then I was like, I need to take some time and go home, be with my family. And I went home with my family and I really thought about it. And I told him then. And then when I came back, we had a conversation and we both had come to the same conclusion like it's over. It's not working. And so it takes honesty and accountability, and friends don't always want to do that. And so something I try to do when I have these conversations with people is like it's hard to be honest and hold people accountable when you're having these conversations because it's like I don't want it to sound like I'm the guy that's like you should dump that dude and give you like a mixed signal like I want to date you. Like that's not the case. Like I want everyone in this life to be in a healthy, happy relationship. Like being in a abusive, upsetting, detrimental relationship will fuck you up. And like in another episode, we're gonna show a video where like I am in the heat of like a bad relationship essentially. And like you can see physically like how it's affecting my body.
Oh, yeah.
Did I lose you for a
You're
second?
looking at me like, yeah, okay, yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. I was like, what the heck's he talking? Okay, I
Okay.
got you.
Yeah, yeah.
I got you.
We're gonna record that next.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, like I want people to be in healthy relationships because relationships to me are like so essential and so important. And I think a huge part about life is sharing it with others and having a significant other you can share life with and be happy and like succeed together with. I mean, it's just like to me, it's like almost like the meaning of life. Like it's huge for me, and that's
Well,
something that I just like had so much experience with at the end that I've learned these lessons that I'm like now I feel like if I don't tell people about it and try and help people, I'm doing them a disservice because I learned the lessons.
yeah. I was just listening to you, and I, I think I don't have a lot to offer to this. I'm just like, dang, like Rowan, like I'm the 26-year-old, and Rowan's the 50-year-old, and like, well done. But I'll just say this: my like I always say, oh, this is my goal in doing the podcast, and hopefully each of the goals are valid. But in listening to your words, one goal that just pops into my head and like just stirs my heart is I want you to be, and well, I'll speak for myself. I want myself and everyone that listens. The reason for doing this is I want you to be in a healthy relationship with yourself.
Mhm.
I want you to be in a healthy relationship with your intimate partner. And I want you to be in like a healthy relationship with the world around you.
Yeah.
And if I can accomplish any of those, all of those, this will be a huge, huge success. But yeah, I think like our goal for 2025 is connection. And there's nothing more important than relationships. And I just think, and I worry that there's so many unhealthy relationships. And if we can do anything in this regard, I would be super, super proud of us.
Yeah.
And I think that I would consider all of this effort to be a huge success. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm so impressed. Like, yeah, I felt totally outmatched here. I was like, dang, I don't have anything. Yeah, that was props to you,
Well,
man.
hey,
Yeah.
thanks, man. So I want to leave with this, and I'm going to the Rowan camera. Um, if you want to take anything away from this episode, it is that in a relationship, it's okay if it doesn't work out. I know that a lot of people are in relationships and they really want it to work. I was in one and I desperately wanted it to work out and it ended up not. I'm much happier now. It was a hard pill to swallow, but like it has helped me understand so much more about myself and just ultimately like heal. So I just want to give people the power of choice to realize like, hey, like if you're ever considering like in a relationship that like it might not be working out, like have a conversation with your significant other and maybe approach it with the idea like, hey, like if this is actually not good for me and it's not good for you, maybe it is okay if it doesn't work out.
Can I ask one last question?
Yeah.
That's going to lead to a whole nother episode,
Cool.
I think. But this is the question that I have. Can you have a healthy relationship with another if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself?
I believe no.
Yeah, me too.
So,
And I think that's the essence of this.
yeah.
Like figure yourself out and other things will follow.
Mm-hmm.
But if you rely on others, if you seek out others to fix yourself or to complete yourself or
No.
to make yourself whole in some way or whatever, best of luck, man.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out.
Yeah. And that's a big reason why I really haven't dated. I mean, now I'm trying and I'm not succeeding, but like for a while, I just was like, I need to heal
Yeah.
and figure things out. And,
Yeah.
like it's very easy to be like, oh, let me jump into something to distract myself, to fill the void.
Yeah.
And, all you're doing is a disservice to yourself. It's never easy. It's not a fun thing to be alone and
No.
to really kind of like come to terms with the loss of, grieving a relationship. But I mean, it's an important part of life, Congratulations. You're a human being.
Yeah.
So, well, with that, guys, we appreciate you watching and listening. If you ever want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at NopeOpePod@gmail.com. The book is available in the podcast description alongside Hylan's blog, which you can check out some of his posts there.
Yeah.
And overall, we appreciate it. We love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.